Yo, Gary video. There you are. I've been thinking while out weeding. Most of your stuff about human, ape and lizard I can go along with. There was one nasty moment in there where you said that, I'm not going to go and get it, but it was something along the lines of we, but really meaning me, as in you, are the human, and the lizard and the ape are kind of providing background music to the human. Now, that's badly put, but you definitely said that kind of we, meaning you, meaning us, I, are the human, and the ape and the lizard are other voices. In other words, what you've done is you've made the triangle that I've set. You've made the king the human, and the two courtiers, the lizard and the ape, as presenting options like fucker, or I know the lizard won't say, oh no, she's only 15, but that's the way it was presented, and that's obviously to be avoided because that's just taking a shortcut back to nowhere. But I've had some really good thinking on your behalf, thinking for you. Moving in the direction, I think, of finding pain and suffering. But I think there's a long way to go. But I think I've found the direction anyway. But the exact road there is tricky. Right, I was I think being mentally moved by your rendition of, I've got a note, taking some notes here, the miracle of making a half sensible video. See, most people don't even think about this, you know, but it is a miracle that we can make half decent videos, although I've got notes, but you said it better than I'm going to say it. It's just a miracle that we are saying these words that to another being are going to make some sense. But this is where I want to go. I'll tell you where I want to go, which it sounds an awful long way away, is that these words that are coming out and going into the internet and going to you, and we can say are going to make sense to you, I'm going to be saying they're never going to make sense to you. They do not make sense to you, never have, never will make sense to you. Okay, that's the sort of direction I'm going, and I don't think, in the end, hopefully you'll find it as wacky as it initially sounds. Right, so I've gone back to my wiggly thing, because if in doubt, that's where I go to start with. I kind of try and either work backwards from the human and try and get somewhere, or go to my wiggly thing, get the basics there and try and move that forward. So I've gone to the wiggly thing and got to, where's the wiggle? That's going to be the tail, isn't it? So that's the nose, that's the brain, and that's the wiggle. I think what's come to pass, which is, this is a bit bitty all this, but in my mind I'm sure it's being put together, that there have been moments that this system has gone wrong. Obviously normal standard stuff, in billions of years things go wrong. And basically what's happened is that the middle point, the brain, which initially was just to pass the information from nose, translate it to information going onto tail to say wiggle, it's what we could call misfired. And what we've got is wiggle when we didn't even get a signal from the nose. And then we can imagine a million years later, you've got a proto-brain there that is taking more information in from more points and is wiggling the brain almost when it thinks it's right to wiggle. The brain wiggles the tail when it thinks it's right, as opposed to just automatic. I'm sure the automatic signal will still be coming to the brain from the nose. You see, this is what helps, because the information from the nose to the brain doesn't say wiggle. The brain, which used to be an automatic system, as soon as that arrived, automatically sent the signal to the tail to say wiggle. But what we have a million years later with different inputs is that the brain just wiggling, close to the 50-50 has got it more advantageous than just taking the information from the nose. So what we've got is a proto-brain being formed, because it's actually doing something that's slightly more efficient than, when I say efficient, obviously we know what we're talking about, just is Darwinian. We can just use Darwinian, can't we? Survival of the fittest, which wasn't Darwin, it was Spencer, I think, but that doesn't matter. Even though it was Spencer, we can call it Darwin, and it just helped that wiggler get into the future to make more wigglers. But what we've got all the way along the line is the brain never knows anything. The initial just reflex one, and then a million years later, when it's got 5 inputs going in and just 1 input, 1 output, which is the wiggle, although the 5 inputs are going in, that has just tipped it past this 50-50 of being advantageous, it never knows anything. And I'd be pretty convinced, although we do what we pattern recognise out there, I see you doing logic, I never know you're doing logic. I just react, tail, to inputs that the brain sees as logic. But it only sees it as logic, like input from the nose was just bzz, 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 and the other 5 inputs a million years later were bzz, bzz, bzz. So all my brain is getting is bzz, 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 and it reacts as though it had seen logic, and that's all it ever knows. And that, I think, I did have a small theory on the first ouch moment, but I won't present it here because I grasped it and it was a bit smoky and it didn't go, it wasn't grabbable. But I think it's important to imagine that we don't know anything. This is the reason why we can never know what our video is going to be. Our brain never knows anything at any point ever. All it's going to do is react to external stimulus or internal stimulus, and things are going to come out. And sometimes these things that come out are going to be what somebody would pattern recognise as Darwin efficient, or a sensible, half sensible video. But I think for me, although I don't think for a long time I've been deluded about it, I think it's going to be essential to get anywhere to grok the fact that brains never actually know anything. All it's going to be is a fancy reflex. And I don't think that's a leap too far. But, so I'll just leave it there. But I think that's the way to move. Developing the brain. But really, I think it's going to be impossible to find from Wiggler up to Mystic, 5 billion years or whatever we're going to call it, not that long, but we're never going to find a brain that actually knows anything, ever. There's no brain that knows anything in that whole geological history, and going forward there never will be either, but it will do fancier reflexing. Leave it with you.